Hello there. So have you ever asked yourself the question, what is the highest maximum magicka that you can get in the Elder Scrolls Online? Well, that is something that I have asked myself today, and I have never actually gone and put a build together to see what the highest maximum magicka that we could possibly get is. So today I decided that I would jump on the public test server and I would get a build together that is going to show you guys the highest maximum magicka that we can get. So I've actually got two builds for you guys here today. I've got one build that is going to be a flat, consistent value on the maximum magicka, and then I've got a second build that is a little bit more conditional, but manages to push a little bit more magicka than the first build. So without further ado, guys, let's jump into it. Alright, guys, so let's take a look at the build. So we actually have two maximum magicka builds that we're going to take a look at in this video. They are fairly similar to each other. However, one has conditional kind of circumstances and the other one doesn't. So to begin, we are a High Elf Nightblade, and High Elf was chosen because this, along with Breton, are your best bets for a maximum magicka race. They both give 2k base maximum magicka, so very important to have that base magicka in order to push the highest stat that we possibly can. And then Nightblade. Now, the reason that I chose Nightblade is simply because out of all the different classes, Nightblade, in my opinion, can push the highest maximum magicka. Now, hear me out, guys. Sorcerer and Warden can also get really close to what Nightblade can do. However, Nightblade is the only class that can stack all 5 Mages Guild skills as well as an 8% bonus from its own class skills on one bar. The Sorcerer can do it, however the Sorcerer won't have a pet up, so they can't run the Necropotent set. The Warden can do it, but the Warden has to use their ultimate, so they give up the Mages Guild ultimate for that % bonus as well. So Nightblade is the best bet for stacking maximum magicka in this game. If you want to have the highest value possible, it is going to be, I think, a Nightblade. So taking a look at the build, guys, looking at that maximum magicka value, we've got 69k maximum magicka with our pet up. Yeah, this is the consistent maximum magicka value that we were going for in this build. So the magicka value that we can have up at all times, and it is 69,000 magicka. So a massive magicka pool. We've got a pretty decent health pool, a pretty decent stam pool, but they're not super important because we wanted to focus on stacking that mag. Taking a look at the recoveries, we neglected the recoveries pretty hard. Now, something I do want to mention is that we are running spell damage on the jewelry, and we could always take that out for recoveries if we wanted to, and this is one of the kind of exotic max stat stacking builds that if you threw recovery on, it would actually have some viability if you change some skills around it on as well. But for the sake of this build, I did want to go the maximum amount of damage that we could possibly get. And sustain's not super important because we have such a huge magicka pool. We got a lot of resource to burn through before we got to worry about getting resource back. So we went full spell damage, and when we buff up our spell damage on this build, we are sitting at a whopping, gonna get into stealth here, 3,597 spell damage fully buffed on top of our 69k magicka. Alright, so we are going to buff up with the Warhorn, and we're going to go into stealth with our spell damage bonus as well. And there you see that massive 73k magicka, 73.5k magicka, fully buffed on top of the spell damage on this build. So a nice, really high value for our offensive stats. And finally, guys, taking a look at our defensive stats, they are not super important for this build. We've got bare minimum crit resist thanks to CP, and that is because, of course, we are invested in Divines Infused. Our physical spell resist are not too terribly bad, but that's just champion points kind of reflecting that. So taking a look at the buffs that we need to be running in order to get this build to work. The mundus is the mage mundus, and this has to be the mage. It's going to give us maximum magicka. Very important, of course, to stack that max mag. And then for the food we are actually using an increased max magicka food. This is a green level 150 CP food that only increases your maximum magicka. Now, in the interest of playing this build in a viable sense, I would recommend swapping this food out for something else that gives you some regen, maybe some health, and that's just going to be better all around for the build. But for the sake of this video, to push the highest value we possibly can, this is your best bet for food. It'll give you the most amount of max magicka out of all the foods in the game. And then the potions that we're using aren't super important because, yet again, they will not have an impact on our maximum magicka value. However, we don't need any buffs, so we do get to run whatever potions we want. So let's take a look at the gear. How are we getting to this huge maximum magicka value on this build? So we're going to start off with our monster helm set. We have got the Dama House and the Grothstar combination in the one pieces. This is going to give us max mag and max stam. And the Dama House set is going to give us stam as well on top. Not super important for this build, but for a rounded build perspective, Dama House is superior to just the magicka alone. But the important thing here is that we are getting the 2 one-piece magicka, just stacking as much as we possibly can. The next set that we have is the Necropotent set. This is the best magicka increasing set in the game, outside of one other set, and we'll get to that set in a second. However, this is just absolutely fantastic, and it's a great set because you can reliably keep this buff up on Warden, Sork, and Nightblade. So very, very good max magicka set, and for this build, this is BIS. We definitely need the Necro set. And then the next set that we're running is the Ancient Grace, and this is an older set that's been in the game for some time, but it is absolutely fantastic for what we're trying to do here. We get the max magicka, and then we get an increase to our base maximum magicka by 4%. So a nice little bit of a bonus to the maximum magicka there. Really great, because when we're stacking as much infused divines magicka all over the place, that 4% becomes larger and larger. And then for the weapons, guys, we have got the willpower on, and this is the best 2-piece maximum magicka in the game. This pairs really well with our 1-piece Grothstar and Dama House, just to give us a lot of bulk magicka stats on the little pieces here. And then for the staff, I actually just went with the Maelstrom Restoration staff. I feel like if you wanted to do a build like this, this would be a BIS backbar staff, simply because it's going to give you a lot of resource return that this build is kind of lacking in order to get that huge max magicka value. And then for the traits on the build, guys, the backbar staff is infused with the weapon spell damage. That is going to help us push even more spell damage on this build. The front bar, we've got the infused sword in order to push more spell damage as well. And then the shield is infused with maximum magicka. Definitely want to go for the infused shield here. And that is why we actually went for sword and board. Any other weapons in the game would not allow us to have a maximum magicka bonus on our front bar like this. So sword and board is uniquely the best option for pushing that maximum magicka value. And then finally, guys, on the jewelry, we are full arcane with the spell damage. And I talked about this a little bit when we went over the stat page. If you guys want to actually play this build and have it be semi-viable, what you can do is change out the spell damage here and go for regen, magicka, or stamina, whatever you need for your build. And I think that this is a great kind of little tip, because you don't need to stack huge spell damage when you have 70k magicka. And then taking a look at the gear, we have got 3 infused on the big pieces and 4 divines. Now, I actually went and tested to make sure that infused actually provides more maximum magicka than divines does, and it does. It's not by a huge margin. Divines with the Mage Mundus is actually fairly close to an infused piece. However, the infused piece is slightly more, so we get a little bit more out of it than the divines. So there you go, guys. That is the gear that puts this build together. And then for the skills that we're running on this build, guys, we are going to go over the front bar, and it is pretty much a Mages Guild bar. Very important that we have as many Mages Guild skills as possible, simply because we get the Magicka Controller passive, increase our maximum magicka and our recovery by 2% for each Mages Guild ability slotted, and we have a 10% bonus in total for slotting all 5 abilities. And then we also have Swallow Soul as our first ability here. And I'm just going to buff up. We're not going to buff up fully with everything on this build, but give you guys an idea of the tooltip that we get on the Swallow Soul. 12.5k, fully buffed with the Warhorn. We get over 15k Swallow Soul on this build. So a massive tooltip on this skill, and it just kind of reflects the fact that we're stacking such a huge magicka build. And Swallow Soul is a very important slot because of our siphoning passive that the Nightblade gets. Give us an 8% bonus to our max mag when a siphoning ability is slotted. Like I had mentioned, this is the reason we picked Nightblade, because it can stack all of these bonuses on one bar. No other class can stack all of these bonuses like the Nightblade can. And then for the abilities we have here, I went with the Degeneration Morph to give our light and heavy attacks a little bit of a chance to heal us for the damage caused. Doesn't really matter what morphs you pick, I think, for these skills. This one is more for the major sorcery buff, I think, than anything else. The Volcanic Rune, I actually like this for PvP because it can stun people, so potentially maybe viable for PvP on a max mag build. And then we've got Inner Light, very, very important. 5% bonus max magicka for taking this morph on top of the 2% that it gives for being a Mage's Guild skill. And it gives us the spell crit, which is going to bulk up our offensive bar on this build as well. And then Spell Symmetry is the last ability we have here. This is kind of nice because if we run the max mag spec, we have an insane amount of healing power, so we could essentially use Spell Symmetry as our sustain on a build like this, and it would actually be semi-viable. So there you go. And then finally, guys, we have our ultimate, and you can go with any morph here. Ice Comet doesn't really matter. Go for Shooting Star if you want the ult back. Really up to the user. But there you go, guys. That is the front bar. Now, the back bar is kind of just subjective and up to you. We have the Master Staff, so I did want to go Mutagen for the Master Staff procs, as well as a bit of counter to damage over time. We've got Healing Ward to give ourselves that heal. We've got Race Against Time as an offensive buff that we can back bar, not only for the movement speed, but for that crit damage bonus, giving us more damage on our front bar when we swap. And then we have Shadow Image, and this is our pet for Necropotence. We can cast this on our back bar and switch to the front bar and get that Necropotence buff. So that is that's the way to go. And then we've got, of course, Cloak for some stealth. And then the end-all, be-all of a maximum magicka build, Aggressive Horn. This is going to give us the last 10% bonus to our maximum magicka on this build. Now, guys, I am not going to go over the champion points really for this build, but I am going to say that having at least 100 champion points in your blue tree in total is very important, because it is going to give you the 20% bonus to your maximum magicka that's going to allow you to have the theoretical maximum that you can get. So you have to have at least 100 points in the blue tree, or 300 total champion points, in order to push the highest maximum magicka possible in the game. Alright, guys, so now we are going to take a look at the second spec that we have for you, and this one is clocking in at 74k magicka before we even get our Warhorn buff. So as you guys can already tell, this one is a little bit more max stat. However, this is a much more conditional max stat build than the one that we had before, but in the interest of finding the highest maximum stat that we can in the game, we had to put this build together. And here we go, guys. We are going to fully buff on this build, and as you can see, we are coming in at 79k maximum magicka with our Warhorn up. Massive maximum magicka value to have, so just shy of that 80k mark, and that is the highest that I was able to push in this game. Now, maybe there's a way to push more. If you guys have it, I'd love to see it, but this is the highest that I was able to get. So how are we able to push almost 80k maximum magicka on this different spec here? Well, the difference is essentially in the sets that we're running. All of the other buffs on this build are the same. We have the same Mage Mundus, of course. We have got the same food as before. We are the same race. We are a Nightblade as well. We've got one Dama House and one Grothdar piece. We've got the Necropotence yet again for the pet bonus, but this time on the front bar, we have got Imperial Physique. And Imperial Physique is going to give us a base 7,224 maximum magicka, stamina, and health. And that is going to be what's going to allow us to push the highest value that we possibly can outside of Emperorship in the game. Now, of course, this set comes with the condition of being in the Imperial City and carrying 10k plus Telvar stones. So it's not going to be an easy buff to come by for sure, but it is going to allow you to push nearly 80k magicka. And then finally, guys, on this separate spec, we are also running the exact same trait layout as before, with the spell damage, the infused maximum magicka shield, Nirnhone's sword, and of course we have got the divines and infused on the gear as well. The bar layout is the same on this build too. Alright, so that is the end of the video, guys. I hope that you guys enjoyed taking a look at this build, seeing what kind of a maximum magicka value that we could push. If you guys like this video, hit that like button. If you guys are new here, hit that subscribe button and come back for some more. If you guys want to catch some live gameplay from me on Twitch, you can check out my Twitch channel. A link to that bad boy is in the description below. If you guys want to send in clips to be featured in the top 5 PvP battles series, or you guys want to send in a build to be featured on the YouTube channel, you guys can send it to KristoferESO@hotmail.com. And then finally, guys, we are sponsored by What the Fast. They are a VPN for gamer. They give me better ping to my favorite games, and they're completely free to try. No credit card to sign up. So there you go, guys. I hope that you enjoyed yet again. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you again next time. Have a great night, everyone.